Are you looking for a meaningful gift this holiday season? Enough as I Grow is a 365-day guided journal designed to help anyone on a journey of self-discovery. With thoughtful daily prompts, it gently guides you through reflection, clarity, and personal growth one day at a time. Whether you're working through old patterns, wanting to understand your relationships better, or just craving a deeper connection to yourself, this journal is a beautiful companion for the year ahead. It's the perfect stocking stuffer or gift for someone who's ready to grow, heal, and show up more fully in their life. Or for yourself if you're ready to turn the page on a new chapter. And it comes in a variety of beautiful cover designs on Amazon, so you can pick the one that best suits your style. I'll drop the link in the show notes. Go take a look and consider gifting one to someone that you love or to yourself. What happens when you're wildly successful on paper but feel disconnected from your own body, your partner, or your sense of intimacy? In today's episode, I'm joined by Xanet Pailet, a sex and intimacy coach and author of Living an Orgasmic Life, to talk about the hidden struggles that so many high-achieving women face when it comes to desire, partnership, and reclaiming pleasure. We get real about sexless marriages, perimenopause myths, the mental load fatigue, and how to start feeling alive again in your body and in your relationship. This conversation is raw, hopeful, and full of practical wisdom. Hey, I'm Dr. Angela Downey, and this is Paging Dr. Mom, the podcast for women who are juggling careers, kids, chaos, and cold cups of coffee. We're talking about the real life behind the resumes, the messy moments, big feelings, and how to stay human when you're doing all the things. If you've ever felt like the only one trying to keep it together, you're not. We're going to laugh, cry, vent, and thrive together. So here we go. Hello to all my busy mamas. I'm Dr. Angela Downey, and I am so glad that you're hanging out with me on Paging Dr. Mom. This podcast is for all of us who are just trying to keep it all together while juggling kids, careers, and whatever else life throws our way. We're going to be exploring those moments that we definitely wouldn't be putting on our resumes. I want to introduce you to today's guest. Xanet Pailet is a nationally recognized sex and intimacy coach, best-selling author of Living an Orgasmic Life, and founder of Passionate Intimacy Retreats. After leaving a 26-year sexless marriage and a high-powered legal career, Xanet now helps committed couples who feel stuck, disconnected, or in conflict transform their relationships into ones filled with intimacy, safety, passion, and joy. She brings this grounded, compassionate perspective on intimacy and desire, and it helps us understand that losing connection doesn't mean that you're broken. It just means that it's time to come back to yourself. I have been looking forward to this interview for weeks, so here we go. Hi, Xanet. It's so great to have you on Paging Dr. Mom today. How are you?
I am great, Angela. I'm so excited to be on this podcast. That's amazing that you're focused on female physicians. I love that. And I'm super excited to have this conversation about how to help people improve their sex life because it's important.
It is such an important part of like a normal and healthy relationship. And when you reached out to me a couple months ago, I got so excited about having this conversation. So I'm glad that we're finally here and able to have it. So maybe can we start by having you introduce yourself and tell us about your journey to becoming a sex and intimacy coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me start by saying that I'm 65 years old now. And I started this journey at the age of 50, which I hope makes everybody, comforts them that you can reclaim your sexuality at any stage and age of life. So for me, I am a healthcare lawyer by training. I did a little bit of healthcare antitrust litigation and then formed my own healthcare consulting firm where I was working with mostly not-for-profit organizations in the healthcare field. And I got married at the ripe old age of 24 and had my first child by the time I was 26 and the second child by the time I was 28 and stopped having sex by the time I was about 32. And that happened for a variety of different reasons. So I actually experienced a fair amount of shame trauma, which is a real thing around sexuality as a young child. And that happened first when I was caught playing doctor with my very best friend in first grade, and her mom walked in on us. And I got severely punished. And then she moved away after first grade. And I really thought for the longest of time, it was because I was a bad person, right? And did something bad. And I held on to that for years. And then I got a little curious. I had this little puppy dog, Yorkshire Terrier, when I was like 8, maybe 7, 8 years old, and he liked to lick my underwear, and it felt really kind of good. But I also, since I had already had all that shame from my first incident, I knew that this was really bad, and it created a ton of anxiety for me. So I had like this first experience of pleasure coupled with anxiety. And that followed me all the way through my teenage years, and into adulthood, because it created so much anxiety that sex was really uncomfortable and painful for me. And I really had undiagnosed, but I've diagnosed it, really vaginismus, right? Where the muscles of the vagina just obviously would not accept anything entering into it other than maybe a tampon. And I also just had, like, I think I was so disconnected from my body and so disconnected from my sexuality and so angry at my body for making me feel so broken around sex, even when I was like 16, 17, 18. And then I got married and I thought everything was going to change, but it just got worse and worse and worse. And I think my body started screaming back at me. Not only was sex painful, but I had a ton of UTIs, and then I had very painful urological procedures, which apparently they don't do anymore because it was essentially torture.
Okay.
Right. And, other infections, like where my body and my partner's body, we were just not connecting. And there was so much drama and tears around sex that it was so easy just to say, like, we're done. And, kind of shut it off. Never did we have that conversation that we're done, but we were done.
Yeah.
And that's not an uncommon, unfortunately, that's not an uncommon experience and story that I've heard from working with so many women who have had a lot of challenges around sexuality, whether it's, shame that was imposed upon them by religion or society, or, so many women have had sexual abuse and trauma. I'm also a trauma practitioner as well, a certified trauma practitioner as well. So, it's a common but very sad experience of feeling totally shut down around your sexuality.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, when sex becomes such a negative thing and it's this constant source of stress between you and your partner, it's I don't want to say easy, but it does shut down after a while, and it becomes a little bit easier when sex is no longer an issue. But what you're saying is that there's some hope, and that you've somehow you've turned that around, although it sounds like it took some time.
26 years.
26 years. So
I lived in a
shared that
sexless
you're
marriage.
like so in a sexless marriage for 26 years. So what was the moment that you realized that something needed to change?
Well, I actually knew something needed to change 7 years before we actually finally got divorced. Like, I knew this wasn't sustainable. And also, and this happens all the time, right? Not only did we stop having sex, but any type of emotional connection or intimate connection that we had, which was, to be fair, limited to begin with, right, fell apart as well. So the whole relationship fell apart. And I think that's very not uncommon an experience that I see when sex starts falling apart, then intimacy starts falling apart, then the emotional connection starts falling apart as well. We were great parents. We had 2 amazing boys. And we didn't want to give up on that. I didn't want to give up on that and potentially having an impact on their lives. But it was to my, looking back, I'm like, wow, I wasted a lot of time, years, decades of when I could have had a beautiful relationship. I could have had amazing sex, right? There's a lot of grief there. But this has a happy ending.
It does. It
It
does. And
does. It
I know for
does.
myself, I went through a lot of what you went through as well. So I got married very early 20s, had children when I was younger. And we had all sorts of issues around sex at that point as well. But I also didn't want to get divorced because there's a lot of stigma and shame with being a woman who's left her relationship. People were like, "Do you know what you're doing? Have you thought about what you're going to be doing to your kids?" So there's a lot of pressure there as well to stay in the relationship, even though
Totally.
you're not happy.
Totally.
So for
100%.
a lot of women, especially like high achieving professionals, we channel a lot of our energy into our careers and our kids. Why do you think that desire and intimacy are often the first things to go?
Well, I have a couple of theories around that. My first theory, the reason that desire and intimacy are the first things to go, is I think a lot of women are just not having very good sex. I see
Sure.
that all the time, right? They're not getting their needs met. They're not able to ask for what they want. They're sometimes not even sure what they want. They may feel like obligated to have, obligation or what I call service sex, because they're afraid of upsetting the apple cart, of their partner leaving them. And when you stop having good sex, it easily goes to the bottom of your to-do list. If you can whip out your
Sure.
vibrator and give yourself, at least some release and an orgasm, right? Maybe you don't want to have to put up with, 20 minutes or even 10 minutes of somebody fumbling around and feeling like you're just an object, as opposed to really feeling deeply connected to your partner. So I think that, a lot of women are really just having very bad sex. That's what I've learned from all of the hundreds, thousands of women I've spoken with and worked with, right, over the past 15 years. I also think that for a lot of couples, the emotional connection is not as strong as it needs to be. And there ends up becoming conflicts that have never been repaired, that creates resentments. And when you feel resentful of your partner, you really don't want to make love to them. It's not what
No,
you
it's not.
want to do, right?
Resentment is not sexy
Not
in
sexy at
any way.
all. And I
Yeah.
think that's another big reason why sex ends up being on the bottom of the to-do list. And yet, as you said, Angela, we take all of that sexual energy that we have and we like put it, just like I did, into our careers, right? Into our
Yeah.
kids, right?
Yeah.
And there's none left over for our relationship at that point, or even for ourselves.
This episode includes a paid partnership with BetterHelp. 3 years ago, I hit a wall. I was so burnt out that I walked away from my family practice. I thought I hated it and might never go back. But what I really needed was to face my people pleasing, the chronic guilt, and the fear of conflict that had been weighing me down since childhood. It took a lot of therapy to work through those roots. But because of that, I'm able to come into medicine in a way that I actually enjoy again. That's why I believe that therapy is crucial. Not just when you're in a crisis, but for staying grounded and being the best version of yourself. I've been working with a credentialed therapist through BetterHelp, and it's been such a supportive part of my routine. After each session, I feel clearer and stronger. BetterHelp makes starting therapy easier. You fill out a short questionnaire and get matched with a therapist quickly. And if it doesn't feel like the right fit, you can switch anytime at no extra cost. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 rating on Trustpilot, it's a platform that you can trust. Click the link in my show notes, betterhelp.com/Dr. Downey to get 10% off your first month. Yeah, there's a never-ending list of things that we are able to put our energy into. So if we have the option to do all these things that, might bring us joy as opposed to like sex, which is subpar or we're just not enjoying, I'm going to put my energy into something that brings me more joy.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of couples get stuck in, there's three stages of sexual relationships. There's the new relationship energy where all the hormones are flowing, right? And it's obviously Mother Nature's way to ensure that there's procreation on this planet. But we know that ends after 6 to 12 to 18 months, right? And then the hormones come back down. And then we get many couples get stuck in what we call validation sex, where we're just having sex in order to validate ourselves and validate the relationship. This is when service sex happens, where obligation sex happens. Often this happens in a state of being drunk or high or, somehow not really present in your body and present in the experience. And I think a lot of couples just stay there often for their entire relationship, but it's not very satisfying to either partner.
Sure. You're doing it because now your partner's grumpy and,
Right.
not doing, maybe not being a great dad, or he's grumpy or he's angry. And you're like, oh, I guess I have to put out again to keep this person happy again for the next week or two or whatever it is.
Right. Or, if I don't have sex with them, then I'm afraid maybe they're going to go look outside of the marriage. Right? Like there's all sorts of ways in which we talk ourselves into having validation sex with our partner, which is really not what we want. What we want is, connection sex, or what I like to call passionate intimacy sex, where we're really deeply connected with them.
Yeah, no, I've been to a counselor before, and was saying how my partner was unhappy with me from in our sexual relationship, and I had no interest whatsoever, but I took that blame and that shame and I put it on me. I must be doing something wrong.
Right.
I'm not doing something well enough. And the counselor was like, how do you know you don't have a bad lover? Right? Maybe it's not on you. Maybe he's not pulling his weight and he's not doing what he needs to be doing. And so you're left disappointed. And I hadn't really, to be honest with you, at the time, I don't think I believed it, because I tend to put everything on me, and there's got to be something I need to change. But in truth, I wasn't broken, and there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. And I didn't know that until later.
Right. And I think that's, very common that we blame ourselves, and we do feel broken, right?
Yeah.
We do, so many women show up in this office, they feel so broken that, they don't desire their partner anymore. They're not attracted to their partner anymore. They can't have orgasms, if ever they could have orgasms, right? It's such, sex is such a, look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Sex is the only thing that shows up twice. The bottom of the pyramid, along with survival and water and shelter. And then the third level of the pyramid around, love and connection and community. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the problem is we're not always just trying to have babies, though, right? It's
right.
I think it's easier to feel desire when you're trying to get pregnant, you're trying to have a baby, but that doesn't, we can't have babies forever. And, well, I guess some people can. My brother's got 6 kids, so I think he's
there.
he's there. But, it does stop after a while, and sex changes, and what sex in your relationship looks like changes. So what are some of the biggest myths about sex and intimacy that you've noticed?
I think there's a lot of myths for women around sex and intimacy. Many of them have to do with feeling that we're responsible for our partner's pleasure, and that our partner is responsible for our pleasure. Right?
Okay.
So I feel like, something I counsel all my clients about is like, you're actually responsible for your own orgasm. It is not incumbent upon your partner to figure out what you actually want. You need to understand what turns you on, what your arousal pattern is actually like. Especially in, I mostly work with hetero couples. We talked a little bit, but I also work with lesbian couples. But in a hetero situation in particular, right, what a lot of men will tell me, and as a physician, I know you understand this, right? Physicians, like I'm going to use the word pussy. Every pussy looks different. Every single one, right? And what worked with one partner isn't necessarily going to work with the other person. And actually, the truth about
Right.
women's arousal is what works one day isn't necessarily going to work the next day either.
Right.
Right. So I think
Yeah.
that's a problem. Like this myth that we have is like, oh, you know, I have it figured out. First, I do this, first we kiss, then I go down on you, and I touch your clit, and you orgasm. And
Yeah.
maybe that happens once or twice, but then it stops happening. And then you're like, oh my God, you feel bad because it's not happening for you and feel all
Yeah.
this pressure. And your partner feels, that they didn't do their job either. Right.
So it's not just finding the magic formula and repeating that time and time again.
No. And if you haven't noticed, and I know you have, women tend to get bored very easily.
Yeah.
Right. I think much more so than men. I think a lot of men would be very happy if they had sex once a week or twice a week in the missionary position. They'd be good. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but women, I think this is just baked into our DNA, quite frankly, because we're such multitaskers. Like we need a lot of variety. And if we do the same thing over and over again, that's another reason why sex goes on the bottom of the to-do list. Things start getting really boring, right?
So what's the key? What's the key to,
The key
obviously it's not
is,
finding the right formula, but what
no.
is the key to keep things going?
So first of all, you have to remember that sex is an art, not science, right?
Okay.
There's no formula. And number two, it all boils down to communication. You've got to be able to be in a place where you can really communicate and feel safe, emotionally safe, communicating with your partner about what you like and what you don't like and what's working and what isn't working for you. And, and it's sad to say, but sometimes there has to be a fair amount of education as well. I mean, I spend at least a half a day on my 4-day retreats with couples just doing sex education, just going over the anatomy, which hopefully, since you all are physicians, isn't as much of a question. But I've had some physicians here too who didn't know some things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we don't
Hopefully
have,
we've got that down pat. Yeah, but
right,
you
we
never
don't have
know.
great, you never know, we don't have great education. But you have to be able to talk about what you like and what you don't like. And, sometimes I will suggest to couples at my retreats, couples stay at this super sexy Airbnb, with a hot tub and a big king size bed. And it's very sexy. We've got a sex swing and a sex chair, and it's just a
Cool.
lovely space. Yeah, I know it's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. And I have a whole bookshelf full of games, little card games, little intimacy games, right? These are often very beautiful, fun ways in, a low stress environment to be able to start having conversations that maybe seem uncomfortable. These are both about like talking about some of your personal issues, values, and beliefs, but also about what do you like to do? Like if we were to try this, would this feel good for you? So really understanding also, Angela, that here's another big myth. Sex only is penis and vagina. That's it.
Right.
That's what most people think. They only think
Right.
it's sexual intercourse, right? But in truth, sex should be this huge smorgasbord of opportunities of like appetizers and main courses and desserts, right? There's so many things and activities and ways to connect with each other and different sexual styles that we can explore, whether, we're focusing on a very sensual experience or a very kinky experience or more like of an energetic experience, which is more like tantra and sacred sexuality. So there's all of these options and ways in which we can actually explore sex that
Mm-hmm.
we don't do a good job in.
Sure.
I'll give you another myth, and this is
Please. There's
I
probably a
will.
ton of them out there.
And there's so many. And some of these, when I talk about this amazing free gift I have to give to you all, these are some of the things that we actually talk about. So another one is that we're usually not very present with touch with our partner, right? And so we usually touch our partner in a way in which we think they want to be touched. And we're looking for visual cues. Oh, is he holding back? Is she making a sound? Am I getting a smile? Is she just sitting there not doing a thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what happens is, as the person giving touch, our energy is all external, right? Our presence, our attention is external. And our partner knows that. They're well aware. If you've ever been touched unconsciously by somebody, like maybe they just sit there and like rub your hand while you're watching television. Now, if somebody does that to me, I'll slap them because it just feels so bad for me that they're not actually like present with their touch. Maybe not for everybody, but I get very triggered by that.
Like just mindlessly
mindlessly
touching.
Mindlessly touching, right? And they're mindlessly touching. They're not really focused on their touch. They're not feeling
I do it all the
touch.
time.
All right. So let me teach you something. Let me teach all of you something.
Please.
This is going to change your experience around touch and sex. What if you were to touch your partner in a way that actually felt good for you? Right? Okay. So as you're touching your partner, you're focusing on your sensation and on your pleasure. So if you're touching with your hand, I'll have people shut their eyes so that they don't have the visual cue and really like focus on the sensation in their hand, right? And this is a very, very different experience for the person being touched, because if you're the person giving touch, you're actually experiencing sensation and pleasure and enjoyment in your body. And that gets translated to your partner who's receiving touch. They feel your pleasure. They feel your turn on. And that usually creates more turn on for them, which then comes back to you because you feel them actually responding to you. So we create what we call a pleasure circuit.
So if you're doing that, then I guess you have to be wanting to have sex come from that. So I guess if you're not happy in your relationship from a sexual perspective, that could be maybe a little bit dangerous and something that you might want, like you might be avoiding doing.
Yes,
maybe you don't want to turn your partner on.
Yeah. I think if you're not happy in the relationship, right? If you're in conflict, then you don't want to give your partner pleasure. But think about what it does. Like even the concept of, a blow. Can I use these words on this program?
It'll be registered as an explicit content show at this point.
Okay,
I think it has to be. I want it to be open and please.
Okay, thank you. So if you think about a blowjob, oral sex, right, for women, like a lot of women don't like it for so many different reasons. But even think about what we call it. It's a job, right? It's a performance. It's a job. I think it's a terrible name. But what if you translate that? If you then say, wow, can I use my partner's penis to make my mouth feel good?
I could see the difference there.
You see that?
And how your partner would respond to that. Yeah.
Right. And then how you respond to it. So rather than feeling like you're doing something for them, you're actually using their body to make you feel good. Right. Taking and obviously with consent.
Sure.
And that's just it's a paradigm shift for people. But it really does change the way in which you connect with your partner sexually.
Yeah, I could see that. Just doing mindless touching on someone's hand and not really thinking about what you're doing, as opposed to you doing it to make yourself feel good, which makes your partner feel good, and then everyone starts feeling good.
Exactly.
Okay. Interesting.
Yes.
So I put this out to a community, an online community, just that I was going to be interviewing you, and I was really excited, and asked them if they had any questions. So my audience is full of very highly intelligent and successful women, mostly physicians. And, for myself, I got married in my early 20s. I went to medical school, and I changed a lot in medical school. So I got married, and 6 years later, I went to school, and my knowledge grew exponentially, but my partner stayed the same. And that put a lot of strain on our relationship, because now I was having all these experiences that my partner couldn't relate to. And it put a strain on a romantic relationship. So how do you not let resentment about like unequal cognitive or emotional loads affect your connection? That was one of the questions that came up, and it was something I could relate to for myself too. It's
totally. And it's a great question. So I think it can be very challenging, but some suggestions I have when this comes up is, first of all, to see if you can find something together that neither one of you know about. So, you're a great physician and he's a great, or she's a great, I don't know, whatever they do, accountant. I'm just throwing things together, right? But neither one of you really know how to bake bread. I'm just, again, throwing things together. So can we find some activities where we can both be in the beginner's mindset? Can we find ways to interact with each other where neither one of us, there's no power play dynamic going on, and we're both learning from scratch about something new that both of us are interested in and don't know anything about. So finding those common ground areas where we're both new learners can really help to strengthen that part of, of the relationship, right? And, and I think this again goes back to communication, right? Like, seeing if you can, as you see changes happening inside of yourself, if you can open up communication with your partner about that, and seeing if they can get a little bit curious about what's happening for you as well, right? As we said before we started the recording, and I've had couples where I've seen this happen. Sometimes this happens a lot. I see it a lot in like the personal development area, right? Like one person is just like on this personal development path, and they're taking all these workshops and they're doing all this therapy, and they're finding out they're not who they were, right? When they got married, which I think is very common, right? And the other person just hasn't moved at all. They're just stuck where they are. And sometimes that bridge is so wide that that gap is so wide that it just can't be bridged. It becomes a crevasse that, the relationship falls into. And that's a reality, unfortunately. Right.
Yeah.
But again, can you get your partner interested in something like that? I would say, like, can you start doing couples therapy? Can you go do a medicine journey together? Are you interested in taking a Tony Robbins class or a Joe Dispenza's class, right? Like offering up places where you can pull your partner into that awareness. And I think one thing that's true that my therapist pointed out to me is that the person who is more spiritually evolved, right, is always going to be the person pulling their partner along. There's always going to be somebody leading them in that direction. And that actually was very helpful for me in my own relationship, because I've seen that as well. Like and I wouldn't say I'm spiritually evolved, but I've done a lot of personal development work. And my partner does some, but not as much. and I feel that gap a little bit, right? And so I've,
Mm-hmm.
we're taking a class together now, which is great, right? Because we're both like in beginner's mindset, and we're both realizing this is really hard, and we're doing it together. So,
Yeah. So I always thought, well, maybe it would be easier if my partner was in medicine as well. And kind of, we were both on this same path, but sometimes like it's nice to get different perspectives in the world, right? So there
mhm.
are some benefits to being with a partner who's not necessarily in medicine. Otherwise, your whole household just becomes only medicine. So
Right.
you can learn a lot from your partner, but sometimes like you're saying, that gap sometimes just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So you need to be careful that, although you're on different paths, that you do find ways and connections to stay together.
Yeah, for
So on
sure.
the flip side, what happens if you do meet a partner while you're in medicine and now you're both doctors, you're both super driven, you're both exhausted, and you're used to being in control. So how can couples protect their
Mm.
intimacy and emotional connection from burnout and competition, or simply feeling like you're just ships passing in the night
That happens
because
so
now you're on
frequently.
call? Yeah.
Yeah, you're on
Yeah.
call, and one's on call one day, one's on call the other day. It's really, it's really, really challenging. And and yet I see the same. I have the same conversation with couples who don't have children. Neither one are doctors. They both work from
Yeah.
home,
Sure.
right? Potentially, they're both available during the day, and they
Hmm.
still sit there and say, like, we don't have any time.
Yeah. No.
So, um, finding, I would say one of the important um, one of the important tools that you can use are finding the small moments, the little moments of intimacy, right? Of like, even having a little bit of a ritual when you first see each other, whatever time of day or night it is, right? That you just like hug for 3 minutes, just hold each other for
Mm.
3 minutes, right? Or, I do a lot of work with couples, and I have them give each other their eyes, meaning look in each other's eyes just without any words, and just be there with each other in a little bit of eye gazing and presence, because I think that it's fair to say that our emotions are actually in our eyes. We express emotions through our eyes. So
Yeah.
finding, with super, super busy couples like this, like finding little moments during your crazy schedules where you can have 2 minutes, 3 minutes of a little bit of connection can be, very, very helpful. The power dynamic issue of everybody wanting to be in control, definitely a problem when it comes to intimacy and sex, right? So, one suggestion I often have when I see that is, can you take turns? Again, it all comes down to communication. We've got to talk about this. It seems like, when we try to have sex, we're both trying to be on top. We're both trying to control the situation, right? Is
Hmm.
that working for you? Because I don't think it's working for
No.
me, right? Like, what if, we take turns? Like, one night you're the person who initiates, and I'm a little bit more, I'll surrender a little bit more. And the other night, you're the person, I'm the person who initiates, and you're going to surrender a little bit more, right? So, and that's a
Hmm.
really important dynamic that happens, that control and surrender piece is what really creates the erotic energy between two people, right? There has to be some sort of electric charge. And when two people are both dominant and trying to, it's like having, two positive batteries. There's no electric charge at all, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They're going to push each other away.
Going to push each other away,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. And what we want is for there to be a positive and a negative, but it's hard. I think that's why it's important. And certainly when you're early in your career and you're staying up, doing crazy hours of on call and residency and whatnot. It's really impossible. But hopefully, as you get more established, right, you block out time for vacations. You block
Yeah.
out, time to get away, to come to one of my group retreats in Costa Rica, where
Yeah.
you just have a week to connect with each other, um,
Yeah.
and make it a priority. But I understand it can be very those type of dynamics are very, very challenging.
So one thing that I often think about is, women, we have children, we need to go on maternity leaves, and we, come back from maternity leave. Maybe we're working a little bit more part-time, and our partner is off being more and more successful, moving up in their career. And I'm sure you see this in other professions as well.
Totally.
What happens when resentment starts building up because one partner is able to move forward in their career and one partner may feel a little bit held back?
Well, I'm going to say this again. We've got to be sharing what's happening for us,
Yeah.
right? We've got to, maybe I can't fix it for you. Like, yeah, Angela, I know, I'm traveling all over and lecturing and whatnot, and you're taking care of the kids, and oh, that must suck for you. That must be really hard. I can see how maybe you're even a
Hmm.
little jealous of me, and ow, that hurts, right? That doesn't solve the problem, but it kind of
No.
does, right? Because your
Yeah.
feelings get heard and you get validated.
Sure.
And that's a really important, I think that's really important. That's what creates the emotional connection, being able to have your feelings heard, have your partner validate your feelings, and feel like, you know, yeah, that hasn't solved the problem. Maybe then we can get creative though. Maybe we can figure out ways for there to be some creativity around that, right? So sometimes couples will switch, right? Like,
Yeah.
you go take your sabbatical this year, I'm going to take it next year. Different professors that I've worked with. Um,
Hmm.
but, those are all relationship dynamics, right? That
Yeah.
need to be discussed, need to be communicated as they are occurring. Because if they're not communicated, then those little annoyances become bigger and bigger wounds that end up becoming very, very large resentments. And that
Sure.
can destroy a relationship for sure.
Yeah. So communication is like a huge part of being successful in a romantic relationship.
Hmm.
What happens if your partner's a little bit checked out or just emotionally unavailable for you? Is it possible for your relationship to succeed?
It's always possible because
Mm-hmm.
many couples do, there are, like I said, there are many couples that just stay in this validation stage, right? That's around sex. And it's also just around like, okay, the relationship isn't fabulous, but it's not horrible, right? So I'm just going to
Yeah.
stay here and we're going to go through life and, we're going to do our things. And many people just stay in that space where their partner is checked out and for whatever reason they want to avoid conflict, right? So there's a lot of avoidance in the
Mm-hmm.
world. So if you want to
Mm-hmm.
avoid conflict, you just sort of stay in that space.
Yeah.
Um, for many other people, it becomes intolerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
After a while, and then you need to go do work, go see a coach, go see a therapist, like start to really understand and talk about the dynamics in the relationship and work on fixing those dynamics, right? The thing is, and this is true about intimacy, emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy, that everything can be learned. You can learn how to be vulnerable. You can learn what it's like to be in an emotionally safe relationship. You can learn what secure attachment feels like. You can learn every skill that you need to know about sex. You just have to want to do it. And I
Yeah.
think that's where the rub is, right? Some people
Sure.
just don't want to do it. So then you have
Well,
to
if
make
you've
a
had a lot of
choice.
trauma, yeah, if you've had a lot of
Yes.
trauma and you've been carrying, guilt and feeling like
Hmm.
you're bad at sex, and if you've been carrying that for a long time, sometimes it's just you just want to turn that off. So
Yes.
you need to have some want to change things if that's something that you're interested in.
Right. Because we know we can't change our partner.
Sure. No, no,
They have to
absolutely.
want to change.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's a mistake we make all the time, by the way.
Sure. No, absolutely. You can't control what someone else is going to do and how they're going to
Exactly.
feel. And yeah, no, for sure. That's definitely something I've been working on for a long time, is just recognizing that. So you've worked with
Yes.
hundreds of couples through your retreats. And what are
Yes.
some of the common patterns that you see in women who feel disconnected from their sexuality or their pleasure?
Great question. Um, Most of the patterns around women feeling disconnected from their sexuality in the context of a relationship, right? If trauma is not a part of it, which very often it is, but very often there are women who have
Hmm.
experienced sexual trauma, and that obviously is, one of the horrible impacts of trauma is feeling not safe sexually and sexually shut down. But if we take that sexual trauma off the table, then I think that one of the biggest reasons and patterns that women shut down is because they don't feel emotionally safe
Yeah.
with their partner. And
Yeah.
when you're not feeling emotionally safe, you don't want to be vulnerable with them sexually. You don't want to open up. You might want to weaponize sex, which happens way too frequently, right? But I truly believe that in order to get to a really flourishing sex life, there has to be emotional safety and emotional connection first. It's the first thing I work with every single couple that walks in this door. In my private retreats or in a group retreat, we work on the emotional connection and we work on the communication piece. Because when you start to feel emotionally safe, then you will begin to open up more sexually. So I think
Hmm.
that's the biggest issue. Another pattern I see a lot, and I think we talked about this in the beginning, but it happens quite frequently in perimenopausal and menopausal women.
Hmm. I do want to get into that a little bit.
Yeah,
Once,
uh,
yeah.
is you know a true loss of desire, right?
Hmm.
As a result of changes in the body, changes in hormones, right? Some of that is absolutely true. When we know, right? When you're having hot sweats, like you just want to stand in front of a refrigerator. You don't want to, or a freezer. You don't want to be
Yeah.
sweating in bed, right? Like there are
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
things that are very uncomfortable. We
Yeah.
also know that, you know, there are ways that that can be ameliorated, right, through hormone therapy and other things, right? So
Hmm.
there are more solutions now on the table
Yeah.
than there were certainly when I was going through menopause, 20 years ago. Um, but again, I think that what I see very frequently is that menopause becomes, or even perimenopause, becomes the excuse to stop having sex because sex isn't that good.
Because sex is something that they were wanting to stop anyway.
Exactly. And this is just
Yeah.
the perfect excuse. Oh, I'm
Hmm.
dry. It's uncomfortable. I don't really
Sure.
have any desire. So I think that's definitely another common pattern that I see. And then I think a lot of women just do not like the way they're being touched,
Hmm.
and they won't admit it. They'll finally admit it when they're sitting in this room with me and
Yeah.
I ask the right question in the right way, but they won't tell their partner that they don't like the way they're being touched because some of them have never been touched any other way. They don't even know the possibilities that are out there.
So you mentioned having hot flushes and standing in front of a fridge and being hot, so you don't want to go snuggle up in the sheets. So what are some of the impacts on your libido and your connection during perimenopause that people might experience? Talked about dryness.
Yeah, I mean, vaginal dryness is a huge issue for a lot of women. Not, I'm not a menopause expert, but I've had a lot of experience with it, right? But, not sleeping well, right? So
Yeah.
you're not sleeping well, you're tired, you're a physician, you're already stressed out, right? That's going to significantly add to our stress. We know that the number one cause for women to lose their desire and men is stress, right? When you're
Yeah.
stressed out, sex is the last thing on your agenda for sure, right?
Sure.
I think brain fog also, you don't feel well, right? And gosh, I was just listening to somebody. She was like, "There's 140 different symptoms that perimenopausal women go through," and I'm like, "Oh my God," right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of those pieces make you feel like your body is changing, and that's scary, right?
Yeah.
I don't have the same desire as I used to. I don't get turned on. For some women, they have a harder time having orgasms during menopause. I actually don't know why that is, but I do know that that's true. There may be more numbness in the nerve endings of the clitoral tissues, right? They're more tired, and they have a significant drop in estrogen and testosterone, and that does drive our sex drive, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So that 100% all of which has significant impacts on libido. The
So,
other thing is weight gain, right? There's often a lot of weight gain that comes during menopause.
yeah.
Women have they get this belly fat, that they just
Yeah.
can't lose no matter how many hours they spend in the gym, no matter how many
Yeah.
diets they're in, right? And so we
Sure.
start to feel like more negative body image issues, which also makes us feel less attractive.
Yeah. They're all fluffier in different in different ways
Fluffier
as
in
we get
different
older.
places.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this is all over and above issues that you may have been having before menopause even
Correct.
became a problem. So
Right.
so you were in a sexless marriage for like 26 years, and this whole journey for you started when you were 50. So
Yeah.
how do you go about reclaiming your power? So you're doing this when you're going through perimenopause, and you're wanting to find yourself, even though you've got these other things that are kind of working against you. So how did you go about reclaiming your power?
Yeah, so my particular journey was a little bit unique. My entry into starting to explore my sexuality came through the world of Tantra and sacred
Mm,
sexuality. And that's just because I met somebody who I was dating in New York City who had just done a tantra workshop. He was a physician, by the way, and he
well,
had just
no.
he had just done a tantra workshop, and he knew that sex was an issue for me because I felt safe enough to talk to him about it,
Hmm.
and he was so excited to explore this with me. So he offered me a night of what he called goddess worship, and I had no idea what he was talking about, but it was this amazing experience where he was, really touching me in a way that felt good to me within my boundaries, going super slow, taking his time, teaching me some breathing techniques, and I didn't breathe at all. So that was very, very helpful, kept his pants on the entire time. That was huge for me, right? Because there was
Hmm.
absolutely no pressure. It was really a night of
Hmm.
me receiving without
Sure.
feeling like I had to give back. And that was my doorway um, into sexuality.
Okay.
Uh, so that's one option.
Yep. Yep.
And it's a very powerful option. And from there,
Hmm.
I took some trainings and some workshops, and then I was like, oh, this is super cool. I'm starting to really have more pleasure in my body, have orgasms, explore parts of my body I didn't even know existed. All of a sudden vagina started opening up, and that vaginismus went away, right? Like that was
Mm.
amazing and experiences for me. Um, but I then wanted to just understand more and more and more. I'm a lawyer, right? So I just, like a
Yeah.
doctor, I need to know this, I need to know that, I need to
Hmm.
understand the psychology. So, I took like 6 more different trainings. But I think the way to start to explore is at the moment, I think you can start reading books. There's a lot of great, books that are out there. Emily Nagoski's Come As You Are is
Yeah,
fantastic. My
that's a
first
great
book,
book. I've got that one on my shelf
that-
here.
that's a great
It's a
book.
good
My
book.
first book, Living an Orgasmic Life, also is really geared towards women and helping them understand the blocks to their sexuality,
Yeah,
healing them, and then starting to understand pleasure in their body. Right?
yeah,
There are workshops that you can take. There are sex coaches all over now that you can work with who actually really help women understand what's holding them back and then giving them practices and tools to start to, experience pleasure in your body and start yourself on the journey of sexual awakening, and sexual
yeah.
healing.
I'm going to put the links to those books actually in the
Mhm.
show notes because I it was a big book for me and I loved it and it helped explain a lot of things to me that I wasn't understanding.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned your retreats and I find this fascinating. What does a typical retreat look like?
Yeah. So I offer private retreats, 2 weekends a month in Asheville, North Carolina. And
Okay.
these retreats are just one couple at a time and me. We work over a 4-day period of time. So typically Friday afternoon to Monday afternoon, about 13 hours of one-on-one coaching. And in these
Okay.
retreats, they're very highly personalized.
Yeah.
So, if you're a couple that is struggling with, let's say, mismatched libidos, mismatched desire, which is very common experience, then that's what we're going to actually focus on.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a couple that's in a sexless marriage, which are a lot of couples that come to see me, then we're going to focus on understanding why are you in a sexless marriage? What's happening underneath. And my work, Angela, is very experiential and interactive. So, we don't do a lot of talk therapy because I find that's not very helpful. You can't really talk your way into a better sex life. You have to feel your way. You have to feel what it's like to be present in your body. You have to feel what it's like to feel your own desire. You have to feel
Mm-hmm.
what it's like when you have that sense of being connected to your partner, even for a flicker of a moment because you're looking in their eyes, right? So
Yeah.
they're very interactive and experiential. We always start with communication and creating that emotional safety container. I have a whole set of exercises and practices that I do with my clients. Then we start looking, typically we'll do touch exercises and I'll teach different types of touch and then the couples will practice different types of touch with me coaching them along, close on. And then we also look at your different sexual styles or your erotic
Mm.
blueprints and what does that look like? And, if you're sensual and your partner is kinky, what does that mean? Right? We get to
Yeah.
explore all of those areas. This office becomes a playground for research and development
I
to
love that. And
experience and explore.
yeah, and you have group therapy sessions as well.
I run once a year, I run an international week-long retreat. This year it's going to be in Costa Rica in May,
Mm.
for a group of up to 12 couples,
Okay.
where it's like part vacation because we're at a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful five-star resort, retreat center, and workshop as well in a group setting, which also is incredibly juicy because the energy of a group is very different than when we're working, when I'm
Sure.
working with somebody individually one on one. And while you're still working with your partner, the women get together and do some work and the men get together and do some work. And then there's some group activities that we do, also very interactive. We also like go to cool places and incorporate some sensual activities in those places as well. So it's a
Very
great
cool.
way to to reconnect with your partner on vacation, but also getting a fair amount of content and learning new skills and tools to be able to take home so you can have vacation sex all year long. That's my goal.
That is the goal, I think, for most people.
Vacation sex all year long.
Yeah. So just one last question. What are some of the common mistakes that couples make when they're trying to fix their sex life, and what should they try instead?
Okay, so one of the most common mistakes that couples make when they try to fix their sex life is they think that if we try 5 different positions, it's going to make our sex life better, right? If we, and I'm not saying not to do this, if we explore different, if I tie you up, it's going to make our sex life better. It may in fact do that. But I think the mistake that they make is they don't understand fundamentally why it's not working in the first place, right? Why it's not working in the first place isn't probably because you're only, doing the missionary position. That may be part of it, right? But doing 5, using 5 different positions is not going to make a difference. Usually what they're missing is the connection. They really are looking for that, like feeling each other, slowing everything down, right, is critically important to be able to actually be present with your partner and be in the moment. And so I think that couples think it's all about variety, and variety is important, but what it's really about, it's about passionate intimacy. It's about that deep, that third stage of sex, that connection sex, where you slow things down and you explore and you really settle into that deeper level of vulnerability with each other. That's what makes sex amazing for people.
So the ultimate goal is not orgasm.
Never.
Yeah. That's a lot of pressure.
It is. It's all, and that's another mistake that they make, right? Like, how many people come in and say, I just need to learn how to orgasm during intercourse. That's a big myth too. Let's talk about that, right? Most women do not really have a hard time orgasming during intercourse unless, their clitoris is being stimulated, which for many women, it doesn't work anatomically. Like, there's the way their bodies are, the way their clitoral hood is, or just rubbing their clitoris with somebody's pelvis doesn't get them off, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of women feel broken because they can't orgasm during intercourse, PIV sex, and I'm like, well, that's a myth. Many women can't do that without a vibrator or touching themselves at the same time if you're in the right position, right? And we have this Hollywood myth that everybody orgasms simultaneously. That's total BS, right?
You come together at the end and then everyone can relax and go to bed.
Exactly. And that's not, and that's not true. So, focusing on the journey of the couple, of what you're doing, rather than the destination, is what actually allows pleasure to build and for that to happen, right? When we're so outcome oriented, goal oriented, it puts us in our head. And sex happens in our body. And when you're in your head, it just takes you out of the experience of feeling what's happening in your body as well.
I'm a big thinker and I stay in my head all the time. And there's often this disconnection between my head and what's happening in my body.
Yeah. Well, one thing that is helpful, I find, if you're in your head a lot, right, is to blindfold yourself, right? Okay. So often closing your eyes allows you to feel more sensation and you're less distracted by the visual field, right?
Yeah.
And breathing. Breathing also is important.
Xanet, where can listeners find you?
So I would love to direct you to a website where I have this, we talked about it a little bit, I have this amazing beautiful free gift, which is 20 minutes to improve your sex life, which are essentially 7 3-minute videos for short attention spans and physicians who don't have a lot of time with, 7 very specific tips. We've already talked about some of them that will really help improve the physical component of the relationship for sure. And you can find that at howtoimprovemylovelife.com, howtoimprovemylovelife.com.
I am going to include all of those links in the show notes so people can find them quite easily. Xanet, thank you so much for being here and for your honesty and your warmth and the powerful way that you hold space for women to reclaim pleasure and connection. So it was a great joy and a gift to have this conversation with you. So I thank you so much for all your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela, and to all of your listeners for all of the amazing work that you do out in this world as well, taking care of people. It's a hard thing to do in this environment.
It is. Yeah, no, thank you for that. And to be honest with you, I feel like I could have talked to you for a whole other hour, but I do want to respect your time. But I thank you so much for being here. And thanks to everyone who's hanging out with us on Paging Dr. Mom. If you enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and hit follow or subscribe so that you don't miss what's coming up next. And if you want to keep the conversation going, you can find me over on Instagram at drangeladowney. I would love to hear from you. So take care for now. You are doing better than you think. That is it for today's episode of Paging Dr. Mom. If it made you smile, nod along, or feel just a little more seen, then go ahead and hit that follow button and share it with a friend who needs to hear it. Take care for now. You are doing better than you think. What if just a few minutes a day could help you understand yourself more deeply and finally start breaking those old patterns? My 365-day journal is designed to do exactly that. With gentle daily prompts, it helps you explore how your childhood relationships shaped your beliefs, emotions, and the way that you show up in adult relationships. It's available in several beautiful colors now on Amazon. Just search Enough As I Grow by Dr. Angela Downey and start your journey forward. Now, back to the episode.